Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our review of It Chapter 2 with the boys Connor
Hello.
and Benny.
Hiya, Georgie.
Well, earlier this year we did our most anticipated
Georgie.
films of 2019 and this was definitely near the top for all of us. Go back to listen to our It Chapter 1 review because it made our top 10 for the year. Did it make your top 10, Connor, in that year?
I don't think so.
Okay. But Benny, it made ours, and it was an absolute favorite. So we were all mustard keen for Andy Muschietti to come back and finish off this little duology. Before we get into the non-spoiler part of the review, we always like to catch up on what everyone was feeling going in, how they're feeling about the trailers, and maybe even a little bit about, have you read the book? What were your relationship with the It franchises? So Connor, why don't you take it away for us, man?
Never read the book. Never watched the original.
The 90s TV series.
Yeah. Came to it really fresh with the first one. And fell a little victim to the classic marketing ploy. I'm pretty wise to it now, but they were saying this is the scariest thing on the planet and all that kind of jazz. This is referring to the first one, sorry.
2017.
Yeah, and came into it and was all right with the horror aspect. It was fine, but really blown away with the character aspect of it. Like it was this amazing character piece of this kind of ensemble cast. And, against all odds, it being child actors, it being a horror film, I just thought that Muschietti just managed to do a really good job in telling the story. And it didn't get bogged down with trying to be too scary. So coming into this one, I was kind of expecting the same. I figured that this would be a cool opportunity to continue on those character arcs, and to really kind of explore what the first one built on. The trailers were all right. I was really sold on this, on the strength of the first one, more so than the trailers.
Well, you, Benny, this was one of your favorites of 2017.
Yep, ditto. Never read the book. That first movie really blew me away. I thought the trailers were terrific, and I was expecting a great movie, and it exceeded all my expectations, which is something very special that we don't see a lot in this line of work. And it was such a beautiful little success story. It was so popular critically and commercially, I just enjoyed all of that so much. I've watched it again more recently, and it's like a perfect movie for me. I enjoy it a lot. When people come at it like, oh, it's that movie sucked, it's not scary, I'm like, you've missed something about this movie.
Yeah.
There's so many strengths to it beyond whether or not you like jump scares, which I really enjoy. I thought there was some really kind of fun, yes, they were the cheapest, loud noise, musical sting jump scares you're going to get, but there was such flair with the design and the creatures and the performances. I just enjoyed all of it so much. So this was easily top 2 most anticipated films this year. I could even make an argument for number 1, but maybe that's retrospect. So yeah, I thought all the trailers were great, each better than the last maybe. But also there was a very keen knowledge that after having read so much about the book since the first one, just kind of endless comment sections, I was very aware that the other half of this story was nigh unfilmable. I know that anyone who liked, for whatever reason, that 1990 Tim Curry one, even they would admit that the adult stuff was kind of garbage.
Everyone likes the kid stuff more in that.
Yeah, and the conclusion to the story I don't think it really works for anyone. So I feel like I had a healthy amount of skepticism going in as well.
Yeah, I too have not read the book. I've read a few portions of it, but and neither have I watched the 90s one, but I absolutely adored 2017's It Chapter 1, and I think just across end to end, that was just such a polished product, from the look, the acting, the sound design. It was just really well done. And on a $30 million budget, and the box office haul they brought in, I think it was 700 million or something. I mean, the return on investment, just on a number of levels, that film really impressed me business-wise as well. So I was just, I was an all-time high for this film, and I thought I'm really loving this sort of 2 movie thing that's going on right now, like Endgame, Infinity War. I thought It Chapter 1, It Chapter 2. I'm really keen for a little 2-hander to be totally awesome. So let's get into the non-spoiler part of the review. Are there any points you guys want to pick up? Because there's so much to this film. You know, it's almost 3 hours long. We've got a lot of things to attack in this review.
It's 15 minutes longer than It Chapter 1, and it feels an hour longer, I feel.
It feels a lot more dense. And
it was very epic in scope.
I mean, that's, if we're comparing it to the first one, the film is larger. The budget is over double. And it's definitely like the scope of it, the size of it, it's significantly bigger. And I really loved that, and I thought it was a nice way to differentiate it from the first one.
So you said it felt like an hour longer?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because that first one flies by for me. I couldn't believe it when I read the runtime last night doing my research.
Because
I knew it was over
like
2 hours,
3
but I'm like, that movie's like 2 hours, 15 minutes or something. I'm like, that's huge.
I was trying to figure out the timing, because it was funny. I had texted my girlfriend when I got home, and then she goes, she was putting together the timeline. I was like, oh, it was a late night. Yeah, like we had this movie, and then she goes, where'd that extra hour go? And I was like, oh, actually, that was like, I just told her, it was like a 2-hour film or something like that, maybe a little bit over. And I was like, nope, actually, it's a 3-hour film. It did not feel like that.
Did you guys feel like the runtime, you think it could have been trimmed up a little bit, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say yes as well. And I think that maybe we're getting into it too fast, whatever, but I think that there is a really, really great It Chapter 2 in here, and it just needs to be filtered out a little bit.
So a major conceit of this film is that it's, unlike the first film, it's kind of juggling timelines. We know the young cast is back for this movie, and they are a substantial part of it, dealing with the original 1989 timeline and the more current day story. I really expected this movie to be more of just a companion to the original, in that it would be pretty much all current day.
Yeah.
They forgot about the concept in this one.
Yeah.
They forgot about the concept that Chapter 1 was the kids and Chapter 2 was the adults. And
it felt like they were retconning.
It was 60-40.
Yeah.
Adults to kids. Like, the kids were in this way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I honestly feel you could cut virtually every flashback to the kids without losing a single bit of character information that we didn't get from the first one.
Yes.
With maybe one exception that we can talk about later. But we were relearning everything that the first movie taught us. And I thought it was such a waste.
I thought so too. I'm glad you felt that, man, because I've been kind of a little bit bummed out on It Chapter 2. I'm like, there's a lot of positives that I'm going to bring up.
Yes.
But like It Chapter 2, right? I feel like each individual scene is so masterfully done. End to end, it's brilliant. But then when you put it in the context of this film, it's a hodgepodge mess, and it's like it doesn't really flow.
I don't know that I would go so far as to call it a mess.
I think
it
that
feels,
compared to the first one, it's like the first one had so much focus, and this one has a lot. It doesn't have a lot of focus, and it feels like quite all over the place.
I got the sense that it felt like it was trying to retcon things in. Like it felt like a movie that, because the first one was so trimmed and so tight, it kind of got to this point. It was like, oh shit, there's probably things that we should have explained in the first one that we didn't take the time to explain, and that now affects how we progress with Chapter 2. So it felt like it was playing a little bit of catch up at the expense of some of the pacing and kind of the smoothness of it.
I thought it was all unnecessary, though. I don't think there were many examples of like important expositionary information that we were getting. It was all character stuff that
Very
it
little.
felt like they were like, this sequel needs to stand on its own, so we need to reintroduce every character's kid version as well, and kind of explain them and their arc in this movie. I'm like, all of that feels so unnecessary if you've watched the first one and come into this one. I don't know why they felt
I was
the need
also
to.
a little bit. There was a bit of the mechanics that didn't quite make sense to me, as in like what was actually a flashback and what wasn't a flashback. I'm not sure if you guys got that sense at all at any point. What was actually a memory, what wasn't a memory. And that could have been sort of the point. Like it is a bit of a theme of the movie, but it did make me kind of step away from it a little bit and try and figure out, okay, like if I'm spending time thinking about the mechanics, I'm not thinking about the characters, which is really the centerpiece of this film.
Yeah, you'll have to explain that to me in spoilers, I think. The characters definitely, I think, are the great strength of this movie, as they were in the first one, but
Do you think? I don't know if I love the characters in this one as much.
Really?
okay, so that's interesting because to make a very incendiary comparison, this movie reminds me a lot of the movie you've already cited, Endgame, in that I love almost everything about it except the plot, which I think varies from unnecessary to reiterative,
Overly simplistic, maybe?
to nonsense. And that I'm
Yeah.
gonna lay at the feet of the book, absolutely. But of course, the movie has to live with its own construction as well. And I really don't like much of the story in this film, but the characters and their arcs, I think, are quite strong.
I actually think that some of the arcs needed a lot more marinating.
Okay, I do agree.
And a lot of this film, which I really love, is about childhood trauma. It's about what happens to you as a kid can really fuck you up when you're an adult. And then that was so much of the theme. It was so much about what happened to them as kids. It was all iterating on that I was like, man, I want to see more of Jessica Chastain's, like that little bit at the beginning. I want to see more of that. I want to see more of Richie's life. I want to see.
See, no, I was the exact opposite, because I really loved how quickly and succinctly they were able to tell the audience, hey, this is where each of these characters is at life now. And it didn't take very long.
I wanted to see more.
Well,
I thought
but
it was skimmed over way too fast.
No,
and that's probably getting into spoilers right now.
Yeah, I
love the way they
agree
did
with both of you because I think they switched focus from which characters were the strongest. In the first one, I feel like it was kind of a lot about Bev and Ben and Bill, the three Bs as we know them, us King fans. And this movie was so much more Richie and Eddie's movie. I thought it was entirely their movie. And I like the idea of shifting focus, but I don't feel like that's what they were trying to do. I just felt like their work with the previous main characters was weaker in this one.
Like, I liked a lot of the stuff, and a lot of the reason what I don't like with the arc comes down to two factors. The first of which is the fact that the adults didn't get enough screen time, in my opinion. Number two is the ending. I have a lot of the actual ending within what happens with the characters, not talking about Pennywise, not talking about, that, I found to be so cheesy. And I was like, maybe this is Stephen King's, what is he trying to say here? I don't know. But for me, it was like, I almost like gagged, I was like, ugh.
We'll come back around to that. We clearly have a lot to get into here.
This is good.
Let's like slam some positives out of the way. Because
Look,
you were
the
saying,
scope.
You
The
saying,
scope.
yeah.
Like
Okay,
you're
let's do
seeing
that.
some creatures in here. You're seeing some designs. You're seeing
Well, let's
different
talk about
dimensions flip on each other on different axes.
Let's talk about the scope of the tone even. This movie goes from straight up horror to straight up comedy, sometimes in the same scene. And I've seen that cited in some reviews as a negative, but I fucking
It's a massive
loved it.
positive.
I love how kind of ping pong all around the place they are with the tone. And as long as it's executed well, I have zero problems.
So part of my trepidation coming into this, just the direction this story has to go after the first one was these kids literally just beat the shit out of this clown when they were 14. They sorted the problem out. How is it going to be scary when they're adults? And the solution that I felt they went with was it wasn't. This movie was so much more of a comedy than that first one for me, and I thought that worked wonderfully.
Because I did love that, and I did like some of the like I really liked what they did with Pennywise, and it wasn't as scary, but I found that kind of disappointing. And what this film was lacking was that really brooding over like this veil across that town that the first one. It didn't feel like it had that same presence.
There was no focus on Derry.
No, and I felt like that's part of the aesthetic of this film that they should have.
But we've just said that there's no point in going over what the first one already established.
Yeah, but there has
So it
to
would
be
feel
some kind of
unnecessary.
continuity, and I was missing that.
Yeah, Derry was a character in the first film, and I don't feel like it's addressed much at all. in
I
this
was
one.
missing it in this.
But we're doing positives, so
Yeah,
we're
sorry.
going to go back to how this movie was so funny,
Yeah.
kind of relentlessly.
Yeah.
And a
Bill
lot of
Hader's
that.
a hoot.
Bill Hader's great. Also, the actor who played Adult Eddie, who
Yeah.
I'd never seen before.
That was perfect, on point, like the mannerisms.
Well, yeah. While we're talking about that, the young old casting in this movie
Spot
is
on.
the
Oh my
best
God.
I've ever seen in anything. To the point where there is a shot where they fade from one of the adult actors directly onto
Oh,
the child actor.
I think it's
and
Eddie.
it's
Oh, no.
uncanny. It's Eddie. Yeah, I
is
wasn't
Eddie,
going to
yeah.
say, but it's
sorry.
unbelievable, and they could do it with almost any of them. There's only one who I don't think quite lives up
I think we're on the same page.
visually, which I'm not sure is Richie, because I don't think he looks much like Finn Wolfhard, but he's one of the greatest.
We are not on the same page then.
I don't think he looks
Yeah, we're not
no,
on the same
He
page.
luckily has the same glasses. He doesn't look anything like look up Finn Wolfhard. He doesn't look anything like
I
him.
feel like James McAvoy
Hmm.
Really?
wasn't there at that level. Like I was like, I know where this guy can go.
Hmm.
And I don't think he's actually got enough here to sink his teeth into.
I think he gave a worse performance than the child actor.
I think so as well.
I don't know
And
what
I
that
agree
was.
with you across all of them. All these people were perfect casting.
Ben was ridiculous. I can't
Perfect.
believe it.
James McAvoy, though, I
And you're
love
right.
the guy.
The guy who played Ben, he is Australian. He's from Neighbours.
Yeah, he's from
Is he
Neighbours.
really?
That's where I knew him.
Yeah,
Fuck.
that's so funny.
But yeah, everyone else was on point. And performance-wise as well. Very much so.
Yeah.
Just McAvoy, I don't know.
Do you think that that's because, like, as you said, you know where he can
He's
go?
the leading man
So
in
it's
here.
nothing to do with, like, I don't think that he gave a worse performance than anyone else. I think that might have something to do with the fact that we've seen McAvoy really go out there and it kind of maybe felt a bit muted.
Yeah, I don't really
think
think it
so.
was the performance. But when I think back on this movie, I barely feel like he was even in it. But then
Yeah.
I'm like, no, he was. He had like a huge
He had
story
the
in
mirror
this film.
scene.
And I'm like, I barely remember him in this movie.
He wasn't the focus. It was kind of inconsistent.
But I thought
in
they
that.
were trying to make him the focus. With
plot-wise.
in
he
certain
was.
parts, they were.
Yeah, exactly.
They
Yeah.
And what I liked is they kind of ebbed and flowed between the different focus between the characters. And I think they did that quite successfully.
But I kind of like how this was Eddie and Richie's movie. Like I think
Absolutely.
it's good that we can kind of
Me too.
ebb and flow between the different characters.
No, I
So-
love that.
but I
I just
still
don't
think-
think that's what they were necessarily aiming for with
I think
this.
Jessica Chastain's character got a lot of screen time, and we got, good amount there as well. What was I going to say?
Did you like the horror aspects of this?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to talk about.
I got your back, Matt.
What a guy.
Mm.
Um,
There's an evil clown in this as well.
So my friend Geordie, who's a really big Stephen King fan, has read it a number of times. He was really hyping me up, and I was like, "What happens in part 2, bro? What happens in part 2?"
Tell
And
me,
he said
don't
it's
tell me.
really much more psychological. It's really about Pennywise preying more on, when you're a kid, you're scared of the eyes in the dark, and when you're an adult, you're scared of the reflection in the mirror. It's
Whoa.
like, it's a different level of horror and a different type of scare. And I just don't. I was kind of expecting that, which is probably a bad thing to be privy to that information, because I wanted to see them. They tapped into some of those, once again, the childhood trauma, but what else could they have done? I think I wanted it to be scary. I wanted it to be more tense.
I agree with you. The tense part. I think they ramped up for the pure horror aspects. They ramped up all the parts that I didn't like about the first one, which was the kind of more
The jump scary thing.
jump scare, but more like the creature feature.
I love that.
The kind of really CGI like teeth thing, like that was the stuff that in the first one was like, it felt like a bit of a cheap scare to me. Like we'll just make him have sharp teeth.
Yeah,
and that's what's gonna make him scary. And I was like, no, the real scary part of the is like him in the vent, kind of like that suspense of like, don't put your arm down there. It's not like that. That's what gets me, is like that's the suspense before the release.
Yeah, I was saying last night, I think all of the complaints leveled at the first one, which I did not agree with at all. I could see, but I didn't agree with. But I feel like they are so much more present in this one, which is just that it's like a series of scenes of each character doing the same thing, like being spooked by something, and then there's a big scare, and every scare is just a loud noise. And
it does fall victim to that.
Mike getting a very short shrift. That's even worse in this one. But yeah, it's a bummer.
But some of the jump cuts in this are really great. Like some of the edits between the scenes, I thought were, they play with audio and visual. Like there's a bit at the beginning where you get like a child's scream and fading into black, and then it gradually fades up into a fairground, and then the kids, more of like a family, and the more of a crowd sound. And it was just some really, really well done. Andy Muschietti, he is an amazing filmmaker.
As a craftsman, this is really well done.
There's a cut where a starry sky turns into the underside of a puzzle being made.
Yeah.
Fucking beautiful, yeah.
Awesome.
And that was
cool.
really interesting because you could just see it happening slowly, and you're like, what the
That's
fuck
unique.
is
These
that?
stars.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, these are really bad effects. Those don't look like stars at all.
So Pennywise specifically, we haven't talked about. Bill Skarsgård, I think, is so amazing in the role. And my main thing going in, which really isn't the focus of the movie, but I was like, I just can't wait to see more of him doing this fucking clown.
And he definitely, I felt like he was in this more than the first one. I felt like he got more scenes. Maybe I'm wrong.
There were scenes. See, I don't know. Like when he's doing Pennywise, brilliant. Like I really like those scenes where like it's really evident in the first one where he's coaxing Georgie to the drain. That kind of stuff. Really, like I loved that shit. And when he, less so when he's in the light and he's bouncing around and he's got all these CGI shit going on like that. And I think that was used relatively sparingly in this version, which is a bit of a shame, because I think that I like it when they kind of take it a step back and they don't go for the big.
There was at least one of those scenes that was as good as anything in the first one, at least. So thank God for that. I was a little disappointed at and again, this isn't what it's about, but just the exploration of the character. I guess you don't want to know too much about him, but I guess I wanted to get more into not what he is in terms of the mechanics of him, but who he is. No, not even that necessarily. Although I thought that was very thinly touched on as well. But I don't know. Just what does he think he is? I know that's weird.
Okay,
but there's a bit at the very end where he gives himself this title that he keeps shouting, and I'm like, that's really interesting. I want to know more. Like, is he just a beast that is like faking humanity, or is there something more there? I feel there wasn't much.
Yeah, how animalistic is this character? Like, how much, does he have feelings? Does he have?
And I guess that's just the strength of how mysterious and enigmatic he was in that first film.
Yeah.
I think when you bring the explainer stuff that they bring into this, I start to go, fuck.
No, it's a whole different thing. Yeah, it's a whole different direction.
The plot mechanics of the whole thing.
And I go, man, he's way more. He's like, we saw the three orbs. Like, it's not a spoiler. We saw the three orbs in chapter 1.
The deadlights, which everyone somehow knows in this one what they're called.
Fuck. They've named everything. They've labeled them all. Like this is some Lovecraftian existential, This is interesting cosmic territory.
Cosmic horror,
touched on some stuff that was super cool.
Don't explain it away. It's got to have that ambiguity. It's got to have that unknowable, ununderstandable aspect.
But I reckon they could have explored it more without actually explaining.
Totally.
Like they could have.
Totally.
I think this was in the first one as well, that there's some kind of First Nations aspect to it, mythology, lore type stuff. And I think, fuck, let's kind of dig into that a little bit more. Let's, there could have been some really cool set pieces that they could have brought up around that without actually explaining what he is, without explaining the mechanics. They could have definitely gone down that road a little bit. And if they wanted to like bugger off a lot of the kids stuff and then just, replace it with maybe even a flashback scene of that, I thought that would have been really cool, but they didn't. I feel like we need to keep. So this is where there's lots of things that I can pick on this, but overall, I had like a really positive experience with this film. So
I was disappointed, I feel, but I think there's so much really good stuff in here, and that's what I think. Like, I think this film, I can go from a like to a love with just pulling out some shit.
Yeah, Muschetti's been talking about like a supercut of the two films, and I don't think this is what he means by it. But what I would love to see is a version like I don't know, like a 3.5 hour version, maybe that just takes out a lot of this one.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't care if it's like intercut or whatever, but I think so much of this movie is so redundant, especially to a big fan of the original, that I really would like to see something a lot leaner.
Yeah, I think it could do with a little less screen time.
100%. 100%, man.
Yeah.
What have we not discussed at this stage? We talked about it looks nice. There's good variety. The scope, like
characters are really good.
Comparison to the first, it's a lot less focused. The scope is huge, but the comedic aspects are fun.
The CGI work was better than the first one. Still not top notch.
And with that extra budget, he definitely went for it. He swung for the fences on this one.
He used it a lot more, which again, I'm not thrilled about, but
varying levels of success.
There was some early stuff that I was like, this is not necessary at the Chinese restaurant.
But the design of it got it over the line for me, as opposed to the execution.
Yeah.
What was that? Was that Pennywise?
I think we just got catcalled.
Yes. It definitely wasn't my phone.
We've got a cadre of ladies who just sit there and watch the show every episode.
Yeah.
So should we move into spoilers? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's just give our final thoughts, I suppose. I kind of just mentioned them, but overall, I was happy with this film. Like, I think the strength of the characters really sells it for me. I didn't really need any backstory into who they were. I thought that their interactions kind of gave it away, and I really loved the focus on Richie and Eddie. I thought that exploring those characters in a little bit more depth than they got in the first one, I thought that was a really good way to go. I think that if you approach this movie as a character piece, and you approach it in the sense of an ensemble movie that isn't first and foremost a horror film, whatever you take that to mean, that this becomes a really good film.
Yeah, overall, like, Chapter 2 is a tough one for me. I feel like I'm quite disappointed with it, even though there's so much good in here. I feel as though they lost the essence of this project with this. They lost the concept of the kids and the adults, the two-hander. They've got too much kid stuff in here, and overall it feels overstuffed, over-bloated. I wish they could have just nutted it down a little bit more and kind of explored these nutted it out.
Nutted it down.
Kind of just explore these amazing actors that we've got in this and like give them a little more time, a few more pages of that script to round things out. I feel as though I'm gonna have to see this a bunch more times before I'm really figured this one out, but really good stuff. Overall disappointing. Number one is by far the superior film.
Yeah, the first one was so focused and such a wonderful just product in its own right, just as a one-off thing. Whereas this one is kind of all over the shop. But I feel like I kind of expected that going in to some degree, so I really was able to latch onto the stuff that I liked, and there was a lot I liked in this. If you'd told me that I'd be watching this on the Wednesday night before it came out and then I wouldn't go see it on the Thursday during the day, I would have been like, you're lying.
Yeah.
It's not true. But yeah, I didn't go see it again today, and I can't see myself going in again anytime too soon. It was very long.
Damn, man.
That's a shame. I like my second viewings. So yeah, ultimately disappointing, I guess. But like I said, I just really didn't expect the adult version of this story to be good, and I don't think it was. I really think the plot was kind of crap. And I'm going to lay that at your feet, Stephen King.
Mr. King.
Because I think this is, in a lot of ways, quite faithful. Yeah.